Good afternoon, good evening, magandang tanghali, good morning. Anong oras man kayo nanonood sa television man o social media, ito ang Bawal ang Tsismis at ako si Sonia Soto. Taon-taon, ipinagdiriwang natin ang Giant Lantern Festival, kung saan ipinagmamalaki natin ang world-class na talento ng mga Kapampangan, partikular na ang mga Fernandino sa paggawa ng mga higante at makukulay na parol na umiindak sa saliw ng iba't ibang tugtugin. Umaabot hanggang 40 feet ang taas. Ang laki ng mga ito at gumagamit ng hindi kukulangin sa 6,000 bombilya. Oo, ganyan katindi ang giant lantern ng San Fernando, Pampanga. Alam niyo ba na higit isang siglo na mula nang likhain ng higanteng parol at Giant Lantern Festival na inaabangan ng buong mundo. Bilang isang tagapagsulong din ng kulturang Kapampangan, kami po sa CLTV ay nakikipag-partner taon-taon sa City of San Fernando para ma-broadcast ang Giant Lantern Festival. Nitong December 17, kami rin po ang media partner. Sa episode na ito, ang Bawal ang Tsismis, kasama natin ang researcher, akademiko na ubod ng dami na ang naisulat at na-research at napag-aralan. Napakarami na niya talaga pinag-aralan, lalo na sa kulturang Kapampangan. Ang tinutukoy ko po ngayon ay walang iba kundi ang ating bisita na si Dominic Juntado. Siya pong may akda ng research na Ligligan Parol, Pampanga's Giant Lanterns as Political and Cultural Thought.
Isang Associate Professor sa Department of Sociology and Behavioral Sciences sa De La Salle University, Manila. Political anthropologist at cultural and heritage researcher. Sinusulaw ni Dr. Dominic Angela Juntado ang pagpreserba at pagpapayaman ng kulturang Kapampangan. Nagtapos siya sa kursong Political Science taong 2008 sa University of Santo Tomas, kung saan din niya tinapos ang kanyang master's degree sa parehong programa. Tinapos naman niya ang kanyang doctorate degree sa Social and Cultural Anthropology sa University of the Philippines, Diliman. Nananaliksik si Dr. Dominic sa kung paano nagiging politikal ang iba't ibang aspeto ng komunidad gaya na lamang ng ating kultura. Ilan sa mga nailimbag na research studies ni Dr. Juntado ay nakasentro sa socio-political applications ng kulturang Kapampangan. Halimbawa nito, The Agora in Pampanga Market, a commentary on Eufrosina Peña's Talapagobra. Learning about Kapampangan heritage in a meditative playing of Unnamed. Recipes of citizenship, politics, moral discourse, and Kapampangan cuisine. Contemplating instances of Kapampangan heritage. Stargazing, the giant lantern and ethnographic inquiries into exhibition spaces. Ligligan Parul, Pampanga's giant lanterns as political and cultural thought. At iba pang mga pag-aaral kaugnay ng mga parul Kapampangan. Umani na rin ng parangal si Dr. Dominic sa kanyang mga research studies. Ginawad sa kanya ang best paper sa 5th Arts Congress ng De La Salle University para sa kanyang pag-aaral na We Are the Best Packers in the World, ang biruan bilang salamin ng paghiraya ng diasporang Pilipino. Si Dr. Dominic din ang nasa likod ng educational entertainment website na Curio Musings, kung saan iniimbitahan niya ang kanyang mga web visitors to think, to be entertained.
Welcome to the program, Dr. Dominic. Maraming salamat sa pagpapaunlak sa imbitasyon namin.
Thank you very much po, Ma'am Sonia, for this invitation and this opportunity to be able to contribute to our discussion on Kapampangan culture.
People would be interested to know why you are so focused on Kapampangan. Are you Kapampangan?
Opo, ma'am. I have roots in Bacolor and San Fernando po.
Both your parents? Or one of your
parents?
Both parents. So, were you born and raised in Pampanga, no?
United States po. San Jose, California.
San Jose, California. So, you're Filipino?
Yes po. Bali yung nangyari po, my first language, or your L1, I thought of mentioning that because we are in the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. Yung pong
Yes.
L1 ko, or yung pong salita po namin dito sa bahay ay Kapampangan. And then, my English immediately followed kasi kailangan ko po mag-aral doon. So, Yung language namin, of course, is American English.
Yes.
Yun nangyari, pumasok po ako doon, nagkakapampangan po ako. So I was speaking Kapampangan to my classmates. Because reason po namin kasi I will be able to easily pick up English when socializing with my classmates. Yung pong hindi dapat mabago at hindi po dapat ma-overwrite yung pong salita na Kapampangan. So whenever I'm at home, I make sure to speak in Kapampangan.
I see. That's pretty interesting. And since when did you move back to the Philippines?
Matagal na rin po, 1997.
Isa sa mga interesado ko itanong sa iyo, itong pinag-aralan mo. Kasi nag-aral to sa UST, nag-aral to sa ibang bansa, nag-aral to sa Universidad ng Pilipinas o Pamantasan ng Pilipinas. At ang pinag-aralan mo ay antropolohiya. Pero yung anthropology mo ay mas political? Anong ibig sabihin nito? Anong klase ng pag-aaral ang iyong pinagdaanan at bakit ito ang iyong naging interest?
With your question, I want to answer first by saying that there's a personal element to it. Number one, going with political anthropology involves me combining my major before, which involves political science.
Yes.
And then I wanted to combine it with my present specialization, which is social and cultural anthropology. Yung pong political anthropology, it's actually a subfield po ng agham tao. Although the way that I wanted to approach it, kapag titingnan po kasi natin yung political anthropology, ito po yung pag pinagsamahan mo yung topic interest ng political science or siyensya politika at saka ang agham tao. So, ang mangyayari po, generally speaking, yung pinag-aaralan po namin dun, kung dalawang dimensions po kasi yun. Yung epekto ng kultura sa larangan ng politika, from that point of view, we're looking at how culture influences things political. So how does culture, and we're talking about both the tangible and the intangible, how does this affect how does it affect how we look at government, leadership, citizenship, policies, international relations, yung mga ganun po na bagay. And then dun sa second na side naman po, kung paano po nagiging political ang kultura. So, yung mga, dyan po papasok yung ideya ng social control. Pwede rin po natin sabihin na pati yung topic ng human rights, dyan na rin po natatalakay.
Yes.
Kasi yung po yung ganong klaseng framings. And also, I wanted to tie in what I mentioned earlier, since we're in the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. Kasama na rin po dyan yung dahil human rights din po, yung the right to express oneself, to speak and communicate in one's indigenous language, and also to practice what comes with the heritage. Because language and culture are very much intertwined. You cannot appreciate culture without understanding the linguistic underpinnings, yung kung ano po yung whatever drives the culture is language, because you're trying to communicate with each other. So ayun po. And there is a very compatible, it's very compatible po yung kultura at saka ng politika, kasi it's sad in a way na rin, kasi kapag kasi sinabi po natin na politics or politika, yung nagiging reaction po ng mga tao, yung parang, ay, ayoko yan, marami yan. Ay, political colors yan, political party. They're missing the fact that at the very foundation, it has to do with dealing with people. So it's how you, the actual foundation has to do with how someone would conduct themselves with others, how they would treat others, and how they would converse about things in general in a way in which ideas are put out into the open, and then ideas are being vetted. Well, at least this is under the democratic setup, which we do have.
Puntahan natin yung itong iyong pinag-aralan itong tungkol sa Ligligang Parol, itong Giant Lantern Festival na katatapos lamang ganapin noong December 17 dito sa San Fernando, Pampanga, kung saan ang CLTV 36 ay pang-15 taon ng media partner. Gusto ko kaagad puntahan yung sinasabi mo sa iyong pag-aaral na Kapampangan-ness. Yung nasa ubod talaga ng higanting parol at ng festival na ito, ang katangian, ang karakter, ang pagkatao, pinagmulan ng Kapampangan bilang isang lahi. Pwede bang puntahan natin agad yon, Dr. Dominic?
Sakto po siya dun sa naging sequence po natin na tinanong nyo na what is political anthropology, tapos pupunta na po tayo ng parol. Sa instance po ng parol, nagiging simbolo po ng Kapampangan ang parol.
Sa isang banda, nagulat din ako kasi parang sabi ko, hindi ba ito ginagawa o nagagaya ng ibang mga mahusay din gumawa ng parol sa ibang bansa?
Tumunog na ang gandingan para sa karapatan. Ang napili na mga iskot-iska bilang most development-oriented talk discussion program ay ang Perspektiba, Trolls sa Pulse, CLTV.
Sa ngalan ng CLTV, ako'y nagpapasalamat sa mga bumubuo ng UP-LB Gandingan sa karangalang iginawad ninyo sa aming programang Perspektiba dito sa CLTV. Lahat tayo ay nagtatrabaho sa media industry. Araw-araw ay tumugon sa tawag ng panahon upang maging plataporma para sa mga walang boses sa lipunan upang sila'y patuloy na marinig. Maraming pagsubok ang dumating at darating pa. Ngunit sa tiyaga at determinasyon, nagtagumpay tayo. Narito pa rin tayo at patuloy nating malalagpasan ang bawat balakid. Muli nais naming iparating ang aming taus-pusong pasasalamat sa UP-LB Gandingan Awards at iniaalay namin ang karangalang ito sa aming mga tagapanood na siyang inspirasyon namin araw-araw, oras-oras, minu-minuto. Nakalasalamat po kay kayo man.
And it's not just a symbol, but it literally embodies what it means to be Kapampangan. So for example, let's go first with regards to structure. Yung sa symbolic elements po ng parol, meron po siyang 4 parts na nandun po siya sa giant lantern. Yung pong tambor, which is at the middle. That's where the design and the lantern begins lighting also. It's from the middle.
Yeah,
And then, yes po. And then the next part, the next layer, or the outer circle, would be the siku-siku, which follows the sinabi this one, which is the repetition of it. Apo. And then we have the palimbon, right? Please correct me if I'm accidentally interchanging the two. Which references the historical context of the lantern having started in the Lubenas, in which the lantern, the giant lantern that we see today is a product of, in a way, I'm going to use this with caution, evolution, in the sense that hindi po sila ganun kalaki from the get-go. Yun nangyayari, they were intended as sources of lighting. And then eventually, with the increasing popularity and prosperity of these barangays, they already had funding to go for something much more bigger. Until umabot na po dun sa giant lanterns na nakikita po natin ngayon. So yeah, yun yung historical significance po ng panimbon. And then we have puntetas, which is the outermost region. Yes, po.
Yeah. Oo. So pati yan talaga pinag-aralan mo. Ang sabi mo, sa struktura pa lang, Kapampangan na.
Mhm.
Ano yun? Ano yung kaugnayan ng struktura na nagsisimula doon sa gitna, doon sa tambor, na tambol ang tawag doon, no, yung equivalent noon. Ano ang equivalent noon sa katangian ng mga Kapampangan, nating mga Kapampangan?
Okay, for starters, I want to clarify also na ito po ay isang disenyo na eksklusibo lamang po sa parol na nagagawa dito sa atin.
Yeah, exactly. Oo, nabasa ko nga iyon eh. Sa isang banda, nagulat din ako kasi parang sabi ko, hindi ba ito ginagawa o nagagaya ng ibang mga mahusay din gumawa ng parol sa ibang bansa, ibang lugar?
Well, for starters, sa giant lanterns po, sa atin pa lang po talaga yung meron. Although there was
Tama,
one
wala namang
instance.
iba, no? Oo.
May isang instance po though, kinuwento po ito ni Ma'am Ching Pangilinan ng City Tourism Office ng San Fernando na there was this one guy going by the name Ray Onopia, if I'm not mistaken. Kung hindi rin po ako nagkakamali, tiga Samar po yata. And then what he did was he tried contacting our lantern artist because he wanted to try creating a giant lantern. Structure-wise, he was successful, but it did not have the same effects for the lighting. Ano pong kinalaman ng structure dun sa personhood and selfhood po ng mga Kapampangan? Nasagot po ito dun sa interview ko with Sir Roland Kiambao and Sir Arvin Bondok Kiwa. If we're going to go with regards the four parts of the Kapampangan, ang sabi po ni Sir Arvin, kung may alisin man po tayo doon, even if we try to integrate it in the other parts of the lantern, you remove one part, it will no longer be a parol Kapampangan. And same with a person. If you remove a certain part of the culture from them, we start to question the extent that they are still Kapampangan. So this is an excerpt which explains how Sir Arvin Bondokiwa, how he parallels it with raising a child to become a model citizen. The child should be complete like the Kapampangan parol, which has its tambor, siku-siku, palimbon, and puntetas. It's the same with the child. You cannot do away with even a single part, otherwise their sense of Kapampanganness would be incomplete. There's a parallel between the two. First and foremost, like a lantern, there is the center called the tambor. The child must have the center as well. And at the center of one's life is God. It's the idea of pure potentiality. And kasama na rin po dyan is because you put God at the center of your life. And then the second part, which would be the siku-siku, these got their name from the numerous directions that they point to. As the child grows, they have to be shaped so that they have direction. Similar to a lantern that isn't given direction, a random motif wouldn't go with any of its other designs. A child should be shaped in terms of the physical and spiritual dimensions, all aspects relevant to their daily living and as a decent human person. One keeps diligent in the designing up to the point where they make the puntetas of the lantern, which is edge, the punta, which is last. It corresponds to when a child becomes expected to lead their own lives, that they live it with purpose and with drive. So the anchoring to the idea of having a Kapampangan design which goes from the middle going out, four parts, he wanted to draw attention to how one layer has an effect on the other. There is a ripple effect, particularly speaking here. And then to make it also anchored to the Kapampangan, we have a deep-seated spirituality, and he references the palimbon. We talked about some moments ago the idea of the ceremony, the practice of lubenas.
Oh, Dr. Dominic, doon sa iyong paper, meron ka mga binabanggit doon na mga themes, yung mga tema na reflective of Kapampangan traits. For example, yung mayabang, katapangan, bayanihan. Bakit dito sa iyong pag-aaral na ito, ginawa mo itong hinati-hati mo sila sa ganitong mga tema? Unahin natin yung mayabang, matapang, at yung bayanihan.
Then let's start with the quicker one, yung pong matapang. Kita po siya sa mismong lantern, and then the artist actually gave me this response rin po na you can see it in the colors of the lantern, and the more hotter colors like red, which is universally also a symbol of bravery. Yung pong isang instance na yung mga giant lantern artists po natin ay nagpakita po ng katapangan. Kinuwento po ito ni Sir Arvin. This was in the festival of 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, if it was in 2015, 2016. Yun nangyari po kasi-
2016, when it rained?
Yes po.
Yes, when it
Yeah.
rained in 2016, the Giant Lantern Festival, because I was the head of the program committee at that time, I was talking to them, and natakot kami kasi kung itutuloy baka makuryente, but still they wanted the festival to go on. Continue, please.
Kinukwento po niya na it was because we had guests at the time, international daw po.
Yes.
Sa judges po ba or audience?
Yeah, the judges, and there's the diplomatic corps. Nandito, ang dami nila noong 2016 talaga. Yung isang entablado ng mga bisita na puno ng mga ambassadors, mga asawa nila, at iba pang mga foreign dignitaries. Oo, tama, oo. Pero umulan. Umulan, huminto pagkatapos nung ligligan, tapos umulan na.
They were behind their lanterns, and they were conversing on what to do next. They've been getting go signals that the show should go on. Like they've been getting go signal to start their lanterns, but everybody was so afraid because what are we gonna do? The lanterns are still wet. And then from his side, from Sir Arvin, he was like, "This is going to be embarrassing if we got nothing to show." And then we just got to do something about this. So what? What are we gonna do? Tatapak na lang po tayo sa kahoy. We'll just use some gloves so that we won't get electrocuted. And all of this brings us back to the Kapampangan trait of dine. It's that element that gets factored in, that whenever we become hosts, we want to be at our best. We're always trying to beat our own standards.
Yung gusto natin laging mas magaling tayo, mas mahusay kesa sa dati na nating nagawa. Higitan ang sarili nating nagawa. Tama?
Sabi nga po ni Ma'am Ching, it's go big or go home, which is also the essence din po ng Ligligan Parol or Giant Lantern Festival.
Yes. Oh.
So it's that dine, the idea of hospitality and generosity, and we want our guests to have the best time. Sa mga hindi po nakakaintindi, sa mga Kapampangan to, for fellow Kapampangans, kapag tinanong po sila ng mga non-Kapampangans na, uy, is it true na Kapampangans are mayabang? Instinctively, they would like shrink back. Kasi nahihiya po sila kasi they're following what is being said by the national narrative. Yun po kasi nasa national narrative po natin, yung values, dapat may humility, may yung nahihiya, ganun po. When, for the Kapampangan, it's actually talking about having a standard, owning up to whatever you say. When it comes to competitions, you're not doing anything underhanded. Mayabang for us is also involving setting the standard and in pursuit of the highest standard as well. We believe in the pursuit of beauty and pursuit of perfection. And in as much as that might be frowned upon for those who believe that hiya should be shared by Filipinos across the country.
Yeah, I agree. At ito yung bagay na Ako personally, ayoko siyang mawala.
Mhm.
Ang feeling ko talagang napaka-importante na ituloy-tuloy natin yung tradisyon ng Giant Lantern Festival.
Pagpasok pa lamang ng Burr months ay kumukutitap at maliwanag na ang kahabaan ng Jose Abad Santos dito sa Pampanga dahil sa mga maririkit na parol. Mula pa noong 1900 sa ginagamit na ang mga parol bilang dekorasyon at simbolo ng kapaskuhan at pananampalataya sa Diyos. Sa kalaunan ay nagdaos ng patimpalak upang hirangin ang mga pinakamahusay sa larangan ng paggawa ng parol na tinatawag na Likligan Parol. Kaya naman ngayong December 17, tunghayan nating muli ang mga gahiganting parol ng 10 barangay na lalahok sa Giant Lantern Festival 2022 sa Robinson Star Mills, Pampanga at mamangha sa angking galing ng mga Fernandinos. Hatid sa inyo ng City of San Fernando Giant Lantern Festival Foundation at ng CLTV 36. Live rin itong mapapanood dito sa CLTV 36 sa aming 39 cable partners at sa Signal Channel 115.
Ang feeling ko talagang napaka-importante na ituloy-tuloy natin yung tradisyon ng Giant Lantern Festival. Sa yung mga interview, conversation dito sa mga iconic lantern makers natin, meron ba silang naikwento sa iyo at sa iyong mga pananaliksik kung ano ba talaga ang na-institutionalize? Meron bang mga hindi pa ba endangered ang tradisyon na ito?
The vulnerability is very much real. It will always be in the background po. Pero sa kasalukuyan, ang sa pagkakaalam ko po, kung papanoorin po natin yung mga nakaraang Giant Lantern festivals, parang may mga bagong pangalan po na lumalabas for lantern maker and then rotor maker, yung mga ganun po.
Mm.
So far so good, parang hindi naman po. But what does remain true so far is that these are still individuals who are either relatives of the original lantern artists, or they are this is taking into consideration yung mga ibang other degrees, yung kahit malalayo na pero kamag-anak pa rin po. Or nagiging lantern artist sila after years of apprenticeship, or yung kahit nakikisali po sila na tamagpapel, tamag-bend wires. They eventually went to become lantern artists in the full-fledged sense. Ang isa pong ehemplo po dyan ay si Sir Arnel Flores po, na dati po
Yes,
ay
I know him. Yeah.
yes po, yung nagtitinda po siya ng tinapay. And then sumali po siya dun sa sumama po siya dun sa isang kasamahan niya na gagawa daw po ng lanterns. Although there's still that, kung hindi po yata sila magpinsan-pinsan, they're like nephews, uncle and nephews, that kind of dynamic. And then later on, yung mga youths po. And then, we'll take for example po, yung anak po ni Sir Arnel na si Mark Nino. I think he's following in his father's footsteps. So you might be interested also to recall din po na we have the first female lantern artist who is, was it Mary Ann Sason Torres po, si Ma'am Mary Ann.
Oo.
So,
Meron din ngayon babae. So parang taon-taon may mga kababaihan ng lumalahok either as a lantern maker o rotor maker, parang ganyan. Of course, meron na rin mga barangay captains na mga babae. Meron ka bang ganyan na aspeto ng dyan sa pag-aaral mo tungkol sa increasing, paparaming partisipasyon ng kababaihan, o yung kababaihan talaga tagaluto lang habang gumagawa ng giant lantern, tagabili lang ba sila ng mga kailangan, tagawalis ng mga ng mga kalat, ng mga lantern makers? Interesado ako, Dr. Dominic.
I'm going to try to answer that po. If you will permit me to be candid about this. Pasok po siya sa bayanihan. But before we get to that, well, number one, we don't have any evidence po kasi na originally that that under the original setup that the giant lantern creation is a male dominated. It's usually male dominated, but it's not labeled as a male craft in itself.
Okay.
There's no evidence for this po in written or in testimony. Nagkakataon lang po ni mga lalaki po yung gumagawa. It's a very physical creation. Although now it's very possible that you can have a lantern artist. It's possible for the lantern artist to not be involved in the wire shaping, yung mga ganun po, the more the craft work aspect to it. Yung mga kababaihan po at that time, yes, sila po yung tagaluto because yun po yung nakasanayan nila. It was a gender role. They didn't try creating because they felt they were already content with their contribution because how else would you get morale if you don't have food, right? And
Exactly.
isn't food. Very
Exactly.
Kapampangan. Masaya tamo nung atin tamo Kapampangan, and Kapampangan
Yes.
is food particular po.
Mm.
So yeah, it starts with there. And then tama po yung sinabi po nila, ma'am, na we're in this day and age na women can reach their full potential, which is how we have lady lantern artists who are joining us. Yeah. And they have the training.
Nakakatuwa. So, maganda rin itong nabanggit mo na kung tutuusin, wala namang ebidensya talaga na ang lantern making ay eksklusibo o dominante ng kalalakihan. Meron din talaga, halimbawa, may nakilala ko na ano bang pangalan? Daisy? Si Daisy Flores yata. Daisy Flores, meron siyang talagang ang negosyo talaga niya paggagawa ng mga parol. Bihira din yata yung mga kababaihan na electrician,
Opo.
di ba? So
At
pwedeng
least
ang
for this.
isa yan, no? Pero tama ka, yung disenyo, halimbawa, pag sinabi kasi ng nating lantern maker, pwedeng nakafocus sa pagdidisenyo, tama ba? Not exactly dun sa pagwa-wire o dun sa mga medyo mahihirap na o physical na aspect ng paglikha nito. Tama ba yon, Dr. Dominic?
It's possible po, ma'am. Kasi lalo na nagkakaroon po ng division of labor po. Although some giant lantern artists are purists in a way that ang paniniwala po nila ay hindi ka maaring maging isang leader sa paggawa ng giant lantern kung hindi mo daw na-experience lahat.
Tama nga naman, itong mga nakapanayam mo, mga nakausap mo ng mga lantern makers, na itanong mo ba sa kanila yung tungkol sa computerization?
Interestingly, sila po ang they brought it into the discussion, and I'm fortunate for that. Mas particular po kasi sila dun sa traditional design na may rotor. If we're talking about the giant lantern.
Yes.
Computerization is part of the evolution of technology, but it's in this example where we see that evolution doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Yung pong kasunod ay mas okay kaysa dun sa mas nakaraang disenyo, mas lumang disenyo. Yeah. Kasi that particular portion of the discussion, that also came up when I was asking them about the ASEAN lanterns. Kasi if we want to represent ourselves as Kapampangan, kasama na rin po dyan kasi yung ingenuity dun sa paggawa ng rotor.
Ang daming debate dyan at saka ang dami din na mga nagtataguyod nung paniniwala na kailangan ng umalis dun sa traditional na klase ng rotor, na kung saan yung mga ano ba to, hairpins ang ginagamit, dapat daw i-computerize na yan para pwede na siyang makipagkompetensya sa iba't ibang bahagi ng daigdig. Pero yun nga, tama ka, merong mga nagsasabi na at ito yung mga lantern makers na hindi nila gustong i-adapt ang teknolohiya pagdating sa yung abanting teknolohiya pagdating sa giant lantern. Naalala ko, dun sa paper mo, meron kang sinasabi kaugnay ng politika sa mga parol. I mean, yung disenyo na may kinalaman sa politika. Can you expound on this? Parang naalala ko na nabanggit mo may isang panahon o taon kung saan parang nag-inject ng politically relevant theme dun sa taon na yon. Can you expound on this, Dr. Dominic?
Okay po. The one in which we see a very uniform presentation of lanterns serving as political symbols or political expression. Yung time na naging pinaka-uniform, as in marami po sa kanila may ganong expression. Yung po nung taon 2017, the war in Marawi, and call for peace.
Naalala ko yun. May mga parol talaga na naglabas nung merong simbolo ng dove, di ba? At saka yung talagang peace, yung word na peace, world peace, at saka peace.
May mga salute to AFP, yung mga ganun po. And for Kapayapaan, which was a feature of Sir Arvin's lantern. And some of them literally played out the meanings of the song. They tried to render it into dancing, lights, and music. Yung pong kay Esang de Torres, I forgot the name of the song, yung Marawi. Yeah, they turned that into content for inspiration. We see these symbols for peace. There's also symbols of identity, what Filipino identity is. And there are these well, this is going to be across the lanterns na rin po. What's really interesting din po about using lanterns in communicating this good wishes for Marawi is that if we look at Marawi, it's an Islamic culture, right?
Yes.
And then we have these lanterns in which
Catholic
tradition, and the foundation is Christian or Catholic. If you want to go further back, we're sharing in their in a way, we're sharing their suffering. We're sharing wishes that things would get better.
Nakakalimutan na nga ba ng mga Kapampangan o kabataang Kapampangan ang kanilang kultura?
Tumunog na ang gandingan para sa karapatan. Ang napili ng mga iskot-iska bilang most development-oriented talk discussion program ay ang Perspektiba, Trolls sa Pulse, CLTV.
Sa ngalan ng CLTV, ako'y nagpapasalamat sa mga bumubuo ng UP-LB Gandingan sa karangalang iginawad ninyo sa aming programang Perspektiba dito sa CLTV. Lahat tayo ay nagtatrabaho sa media industry. Araw-araw ay tumugon sa tawag ng panahon upang maging plataporma para sa mga walang boses sa lipunan upang sila'y patuloy na marinig. Maraming pagsubok ang dumating at darating pa. Ngunit sa tiyaga at determinasyon, nagtagumpay tayo. Narito pa rin tayo at patuloy nating malalagpasan ang bawat balakid. Muli, nais naming iparating ang aming taus-pusong pasasalamat sa UP-LB Gandingan Awards at iniaalay namin ang karangalang ito sa aming mga tagapanood na siyang inspirasyon namin araw-araw, oras-oras, minu-minuto. Nakalasalamat po kay kayong ano.
the lantern is always going to have its roots. Alam po natin na pang Pasko siya.
Mhm. Tama, pampasko.
And then it's just a matter of especially considering na rin po na yung dahil may audience impact at saka we want variation for each performance, ganun po nakakaroon ng mga iba-ibang symbols. Kasi if we're going to be focusing purely on a trying to look at it from a Christian Christmassy aspect, napakalimitado ng mga maari pong maging disenyo ng parol. At saka sabi nga po ng mga lantern artists natin, we already know it's a Christmas lantern, so how do we provide variety? And then, take into consideration na rin po na dahil ang Giant Lantern Festival ay ginagawa tuwing December, the last part of the year, it's like an avenue to be able to reflect and express and on the events of the year. Yung pong sa political aspect, when I've asked these lantern artists, these individuals who are known to incorporate political symbols in their lantern, the number one rule is that you can talk about events that have happened in the country, but you have to make sure that whatever you say, kung ano po yung palalabasin sa lantern, kahit sa audio, is free from position. So, kung pagkukwento po siya, then it's okay. If it's for diplomacy, you're making diplomatic symbols there, it's okay also. Because a lantern artist, yung pong vocation po nila is to bring enlightenment, is to bring joy. And so under such a vocation, they will never bring shade. That's the direct opposite. So it's not possible for there to be a lantern which is a satire, because once you start doing that, you're making yourself available to criticism. Advocacies pwede po. Si Sir Arnel Flores po ay gumawa ng design na Save Life, Save Trees. So kasama din po siya dun sa 2017 lineup.
Yung I hate drugs, parang meron eh.
Yes
Panahon
po.
ni Presidente Duterte, di ba? Parang merong gano'n.
Was it 2015 or earlier? I have that in my study. It was a design by Sir Arvin Bondok Kiwa. Opo. Si Sir Arvin po yung mas recognized po in using political symbols in his lanterns. Diplomatic symbols, by the way. I have to clarify that because for those who are watching us and who might have missed the part in our discussion earlier. Yes po.
Tama, wala pa naman ako nakitang parang gumawa ng parol na gumamit ng mga simbolo o salita o tugtugin na close to being a political satire, di ba?
The reason why wala pa po tayo nakikitang satire or yung mga throwing shade talaga, the danger has to do with the fact that when we're talking about the giant lantern, we're talking about something that is very massive, something that cannot be ignored. The giant lantern is something that shouts audioly kapag may audio, even visually, kahit alisin niyo po yung audio, kapag nakikita niyo po nagpo-perform, nagpo-project yung lantern, kitang-kita. We cannot be discreet in something that is that massive. So,
tama.
It's hard to throw.
Magandang insight yan. Tama.
Yeah, kaya there are risks associated with that.
Nakakalimutan na nga ba ng mga Kapampangan o kabataang Kapampangan ang kanilang kultura?
There is the vulnerability po. May posibilidad po kasi mas tinatangkilikan po nila yung either yung mga nakikita natin sa national setting or sa international.
Dapat bang maging opisyal na Christmas capital of the Philippines ang Pampanga dahil sa ating giant lanterns?
May nagsasabi po na it is, Although, kailangan din po natin i-consider yung lineup din ng pagkain. It's not just the giant lanterns. Meron po kasi
Yes.
tayong duman, patko, at saka yung ligang Pasko.
Mas angkop ba ang pagiging culinary capital of the Philippines o pagiging Christmas capital of the Philippines?
Di po ba pwedeng both?
So, isang salitang maglalarawan sa kulturang Kapampangan para sa iyo.
Mayabang.
Isang salitang maglalarawan sa ating mga lantern makers.
Malalim or malalam. They didn't need the time to prepare, actually, right on the fly, and without missing a heartbeat. They instinctively knew what to answer, because we're talking about people who've had this both in their bloodline, and they've been practicing this. They've taken part of the lantern tradition, that it practically informed who they are in terms of their personhood, their identity. These are really great people. I've been humbled to. It was a humbling experience to get to speak with these really great minds. Yeah.
Ang ganda nung sinabi mo. Kasi syempre ang mga creative na tao ito, di ba? Ang malikhaing tao, sobrang malikhain. Kanya kung ganyan sila kalikhain at ganyan ang vision nila, di ba? Ang kanilang imahinasyon, ang husay ng kanilang kamay, ang husay ng kanilang attitude, di ba? Balo mo, kailangan lang saluduan talaga ring lantern makers. Can you imagine? Nung pilan lang tao all over the world, lalo na rin Kapampangan, ang pong Pilipinong makasalbag ka rin niyayaliwang lugar. I really wanted to ask you so many questions pa, kasi napaka-interesting nitong subject matter na ito, pero alam ko meron tayong limitasyon sa oras. So finally, probably you have a message para sa ating mga kabalen sa pamamagitan ng CLTV 36. You might want to say that now as a parting message.
Okay. Munang-muna po, dahil po salamat kining in-invite niyo ko kining discussion tamo pong ini. Imburi ko pong sabihan ka rin katamong memalen, kabalen, Kapampangan tamo po, mga Pampangan tamo. Kasi atin pong matilan kasing expressions na alayang equivalent karing aliwang mano. Pangadwa, uli ning International Decade ng Indigenous Languages, ang kiyang pamayari man po ito, etamo po kakalingwan na etsyong mano, ing realidad tamo bilang Kapampangan. And then last but not least, in neto nga memalen, part of being a citizen has to do with taking what it is that we feel driven and passionate about, what we think we're good at, and trying to incorporate our identity as Kapampangans in order to make sure that our culture, our practices get not only preserved, but documented, as well as acted out. Kasi naniyaman po yung saysay, nanitam pamag-preserve, nung yan naman mapapractice, nung yan naman po may kakakabaldugan yan yung panahon na ito. So ito po ito. Dahil pong salamat ng Sonia.
Ita, very well said. And it is a timely reminder. Sabi mo pinandin talagang atin tamong kailangan gawan para makalingwan, ing kaya katamong tradisyon, ing kaya katamong amanong siswan, ing kaya katamong kultura, ing gana-gana, ing kaya katamong kasaysayan, kasipin, dakala threats, dakala banta, ing kaya katamong kultura, ing kaya katamong lengguwahe. Dakala salamat kaya ka, Dr. Dominic Angela Huntado. Nakatutuwang isipin na sabi nga ni Dr. Dominic, yung kultura ay nasa kaibuturan ng ating pagkatao, kanya kailangan anumang kultura, lengguwahe meron tayo, kailangan natin itong i-cultivate at i-promote, i-preserba para na rin, of course, sa mga darating na henerasyon, hindi lamang ng Kapampangan, kundi ng mga Pilipino. Mapapanood niyo po ang programang ito tuwing Miyerkules alas 7 ng gabi sa CLTV 36 PTV at sa aming official YouTube channel, CLTV 36 Official. Sabi ko na nga po sa inyo, may replay tayo sa 39 cable partners, sa Signal TV Channel 115 at nationwide po yan. I-follow nyo rin po kami sa aming mga social media channels na makikita nyo sa aming mga TV screens. Maraming salamat, salamat po. See you next time. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Merry Christmas sa iyo, Dr. Dominic, at sa iyong pamilya. Stay safe, mag-mask pa rin, mag-social distancing, at palaging maghuhugas ng kamay. Muli ako po si Sonia Soto, taga rito. Kasama nyo, CLTV 36. Atin to.